Hi, my name is Nelson. I'm the CEO of PropertyQuants. Thanks so much for joining me in this session. Now, there's a lot of buzz around data science, but what are the tangible and concrete benefits of these methods for real estate? In this session, we'd like to drill down a little bit and explore some of the tangible benefits of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence for various market participants, real estate investment funds and investors, property developers, realtors and brokers, appraisers and valuators, as well as Proptech companies. Along the way, we'll highlight some of the trends to watch, as well as companies that you might want to take note of, and how these can be helpful to you as well. By way of background, educationally, I did a PhD in decision sciences, a CFA, and my undergraduate was in economics and mathematics statistics. I started my career in quantitative investing in hedge funds in the US, was working in the sovereign wealth fund in Singapore for a while, and then also was engaged in high frequency trading. So what I was doing was always building these data-driven models to invest. And I was also investing in real estate in a couple of different places, spotted the opportunity to bring these methods from quantitative finance over into real estate, and started PropertyQuants about 3 years ago to actually do this. I am currently also an adjunct faculty instructor where I teach certain courses in data science at the Singapore Management University and upcoming in National University of Singapore's Asian Institute of Digital Finance. Now, by way of background, in terms of what's going on in the space for data science and real estate, we note a lot of increased interest. Now, just looking at sort of the investment fund space, we can highlight a couple of articles that came out recently. First, we saw, in 2020, Skyline.ai was announcing their second AI-driven acquisition deal using, data-driven methods to pick commercial real estate investments. A little bit more recently, we see Investor, and I believe together with Oxford Properties, using some AI-driven approaches to try and pick investments in Australia, right? So pretty big moves by some fairly large funds. And then also Quarry together with Cherry recently announced that they've used data-driven methods to automatically source investments in property in New York. And finally, which is also pretty exciting, Two Sigma, which was traditionally a quantitative hedge fund engaged in trading some other markets, recently announced that they want to take these methods and move them into real estate. So a lot of interest in this space, and a lot is happening right now. And so it's a good time to discuss how these approaches, these data science approaches, can benefit a whole range of market participants, including but not limited to investment funds. So in terms of the state of play, these are some really good reports to look up as well. You can look at the KPMG Proptech surveys 2018 and 2019. And in there, they surveyed a whole bunch of people in the real estate industry. And the finding is that, of all these market participants, almost exactly half of them felt that of all the technologies out there, it was going to be AI, big data, and data analytics that would have the biggest impact on the real estate industry in the long term. But there's still, a pretty big gap in terms of implementation. To date, still 80% of firms do not have most or all of their decision-making led by data. So there's a lot more to do there. And in terms of people and skills, there's still a little bit of a skills gap, right? The same reports also point out that while a lot of real estate companies are appointing people to be in charge of digital transformation or similar efforts, only 5% of these people have a relevant background in data analytics or something similar. So there is a little bit of a skills gap there. And we'll talk a little bit at the end of this session about some efforts that we are undertaking to help to narrow that skills gap. Now, as mentioned, what we'd like to talk about today, we understand that data science could potentially be really important for the real estate industry, but what are some of the tangible ways in which it can be used? We're going to discuss this in two ways. First, we want to talk about some of the core data science activities as it relates to real estate, and we'll talk about how that can be beneficial to a large number of players. And in the second part of this session, we want to discuss a little bit some of these specific use cases for specific market participants, and we'll drill down two examples that may apply to one type of participant and maybe not to others. And so with that, let's begin. First and foremost, in order to do any kind of data science or machine learning, we need to have the data in hand. In real estate, data can be fragmented and in some cases a little bit opaque, depending on your geography and your asset class. And there are a good number of companies in the space that are trying to solve this problem and, shed some light on what in some areas traditionally has been a somewhat opaque market. Some companies worth highlighting in commercial real estate space in the US, ComStack, which will allow commercial real estate brokers to sort of exchange information in exchange for figuring out other comps, and can then provide a data set for other people or other market participants who are interested in learning more about where the market is. Cherry out in the US also making strides in terms of aggregating and being a platform for data across the real estate industry, and becoming somewhat a platform which can on-sell other data sets as well. So that's worth looking into. And then looking out in Asia, Bridge5 Asia has done a really good job of putting together data for multiple different asset classes in China. And so if you are interested in understanding the Chinese real estate market a little bit better, you can look at Bridge5 Asia. And there are a really large number of other data providing companies out there for real estate. This is just a sampling of them. Now, having the data isn't the end of the story, right? One of the challenges in real estate is that if we think about a property, each property is different, and any given property transacts at best, once every couple of years. So with that, it's not so straightforward to just have a data set and then try to understand where the market has been. What we need to do is to use some of these statistical methods to control for quality differences among transactions to understand market performance. To give a simple example, if we're thinking about residential properties, in a given quarter, if for whatever reason, say somebody launched a new luxury condominium, and this is filled with very small units with a very high per square foot price, in that quarter, it might look, if you just take a simple average, like the property prices have tilted up. And then in the next quarter, if suddenly there was a lot of transactions of relatively older, larger houses in the outskirts, then again, all of a sudden, the per square foot price of your index would look like it dropped. But actually, it's not a change in the property market performance. It's not a change in the willingness to pay for real estate, but it's a change in the quality mix of properties that transacted. And so in order to understand what's going on, we need the techniques for property price indexation. When we do this, we can also then zoom in and understand sub-market performance. As we were showing on the previous chart, this is an analysis that was done in-house, and we're able to understand, for example, the overall London market performance in the blue line up to 2019. And we can spot, if we zoom in just on prime central London, some kind of divergences, right? So we can pick up sub-market performance, and this can lead to identifying opportunities, if you're looking at it from an investment perspective, or benchmarking, how your investments are performing if you're a fund, or just generally comparing different markets for various types of market participants. We can even zoom in and go at an even more granular level, and we can assess performance, at various development projects as well. And so, this can be useful, for example, if you're a real estate agent or broker, to understand really granular performance numbers. Now, the other things that we can look at, we can identify zones of opportunity. And overall, with indexation, we can then enable an analysis of how a portfolio is performing. And we can also enable time series forecasting. In order to do some of these forecasting applications, we do need to have property price indexes to begin with. So these are some of the benefits of having an indexation methodology. Next, we want to talk about automated valuation models. So here is an example of automated valuation model that I'd like to share with you. So if you just bear with me as I share the screen. This is something that we developed in-house at PropertyQuants. And what it is given a series of information about real estate transactions, as well as information about localities and so on, an automated valuation model will combine all of this information together to produce an estimate of a fair market property price. You can even talk about producing a range estimate for that property, per square foot estimate, and even talk about, where that property price has evolved over time. And if we go back to what we wanted to discuss, which is, thinking about how this can benefit various market participants, let's have a look at how this could be useful for, say, real estate investors, right? For investors, you can use the valuation model to determine fair prices to buy, sell, or lease properties. You could use that to scour in combination with a large number of listing data undervalued opportunities. And that's why I say we do it at scale, because with these automated methods, you could scan thousands of listings and automatically find, the ones that appear the most undervalued. As a side effect of building an automated valuation, we can understand which factors contribute to real estate prices being higher or lower. And so this, is another benefit of automated valuation, identifying the drivers of real estate prices. We can assess the return on investment of making certain alterations to the property. If we understand what causes property prices to be higher or lower, we can even estimate if you change a property from, say, being a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, or in a residential space, if you add a swimming pool to a property, is that something that generates a sufficient return on investment? Now, we can think about how this is useful for other market participants as well, right? If you're a property developer, you can determine prices to buy or sell a piece of a property at, how much to lease it out for. So all of that's useful. You could determine how much to bid for a parcel of land or redevelopment plot based on understanding the potential pricing of a potential property you could build there. Identifying the drivers of real estate pricing, help you make some decisions as well. And then if you're a realtor, a lot of this is definitely helpful. And one thing we wanted to highlight is that, you could use these methods to also maybe find off-market inventory. So what you could do is, combine records about transactions, maybe even records about mortgages, and figure out with the automated valuation, which owners might be sitting on a significant amount of equity. And even if their property is not on the market, maybe you knock on the door and see if he's willing to sell. With appraisers, again, definitely, they can operate at scale. They can now issue valuations much more quickly. They could, differentiate their business on that front by using more of these tech-enabled methods, and could operate beyond the limits of human capacity, right? If you think about how a valuation is being done today, appraiser might look at maybe 3 or maybe, 10 properties to come up with a valuation. A statistical model could look theoretically at hundreds of thousands of properties to determine a fair market value for a piece of real estate. So overall, for a number of market participants, these approaches can help to differentiate and scale the business. Now, if we think about Proptechs, right? With these techniques for automated valuation, a number of different business models are possible. First of all, definitely directly selling the valuations, right? One example in commercial real estate space is Bowery Valuations. Um, Another sort of business model is moving up the value chain. You might be a data provider, and you can move up the value chain and also sell some of these analysis or analytics. House Canary does have a good data set for US residential, and on top of that, it's able to sell valuations as another product. And also a map-based view where you can explore and things like that. Then there is the instant buyers. So Open Door is just one example of that. If you supply a property address, they are able to, based on a really good automated valuation, give an instant bid for how much they would pay for your property. So that's another really interesting business model. And then we can think about alternative financing, so instant issuances of mortgages, right, based also on having a good valuation. Then there are tech-enabled brokerage players, so using some of these techniques to make recommendations about how much to price property, or find suitable properties for particular clients. So those are potential applications for Proptechs. Another core technique for data science and real estate is time series forecasting. Now, with time series forecasting, you're able to take a particular series or piece of data and try to forecast how it might evolve over time. One example of this is definitely combining property market index data together with, say, macroeconomic data, property transaction levels, how much activity is going on, supply side factors, right, how much is coming on the market and things like that, vacancy and absorption. And you can put all of this together and apply some of these time series methods to make forecasts of potential price appreciation in different submarkets. So this definitely is really relevant to a lot of market participants. You could pick the best markets to invest in at scale, right? So if you're a real estate investor, you could, improve your returns. You could expand the areas that you're willing to keep track of and invest in, and monitor them in an automated way. Same thing with developers, right? Same thing with realtors. You could figure out, recommendations for your clients, right? Which are the best markets to invest in, and you could keep track of, thousands and thousands of potential opportunities. You could use time series forecasting to improve discounted cash flow type models for valuation, especially if we're thinking about some of the input components into these models, we could forecast how those might grow over time. We can time buys and sells, right? So with the time series forecasting, we can figure out if our forecast is for a market to go up or to go down. This helps us to time our entries and exits. We might be able to forecast selling and leasing prices as well. And so, if you think about a property developer buys a plot of land and needs to develop it and only sell it 2 years into the future, well, we can understand how much those prices might be 2 years out by using some of these time series forecasting methods. And with all of that, you could rigorously estimate potential returns on particular deals and then improve your returns overall. Now, another core technique is geographic information systems or location analysis. There are a couple of core platforms that you could use to do geographic, analysis of spatial analysis or location analysis is another way to phrase it. S3 ArcGIS is one of these key technologies that you might want to look into. This will help you with site selection, visualizing of location data, finding of a great number of data sets or layers of information about various factors that could be useful in all kinds of real estate decision making, commute times, population densities, really a whole range of things that can help in your decision making for investing, selling, development, and so on. Now, there are also dedicated companies that do some of this data provision. You can look at companies like PlaySense that might sell you information, about movements of people or particular information tied to a locality. In the retail industry, you could look at a company like a retail space. Given a particular address, will tell you information about the types of footfalls, right? Based on demographics, whether it's weekend or weekday at various times of the day. And so you could decide whether, particular location makes sense for a particular type of business, right? And this can be useful for various participants, if you're investing in this type of space, or if you are operating the retail space, or if you're brokering the sale or lease of this type of space, this can all be useful. And then you can look at location scoring. So a really interesting company out of Texas is Locate Alpha. And if you go to their website, you will see that they have a lot of features for you to score various locations on various different factors. And this can help you from many perspectives, not least of which is if you are an investor looking for the right place to buy a particular property. Now, with that, these are sort of the core techniques in real estate data science, right? We talked about providing data, indexing of property prices, we talked about building automated valuations, time series forecasting, and also spatial or location analysis. Now I want to move on and talk about specific real estate data science applications, by which I mean, these might apply to one type of market participant and maybe less so to another different type of market participant. Let's have a look at some of these examples. First, let's take the perspective of a property developer, right? Somebody who, maybe buys a plot of land and redevelops it, or buys an existing plot, tears down what's there, and then develops it with something else. There are companies and techniques available to do planning or development analysis. One of these companies is in the US, envelope.city, and is able to help you to analyze the zoning rules, understand, the airspace and what can be built in a particular location, and then, with this sort of spatial data analysis, help you to search through a whole range of potential plots to find the best development opportunity. So that's, very specifically valuable to property developers. There are a couple of other companies that operate in a similar or adjacent space. Ratio.city does something somewhat similar out in Canada, where you can also do some analysis about zoning and plots. Deep blocks is also worth looking at, and map your property out in Canada, also having sort of a map-based technique where you can study due diligence and feasibility and where you might want to do some property development potentially. So these are companies worth watching. Now, sticking with sort of the property development theme, there are also potentials for you to do floor plan or architecture or BIM type of analyses. Some companies in the space coming out of Switzerland, Archeologic and Archelyze, help you to go from a floor plan to understanding, what might be the right way to lay it out, or to convert from a paper floor plan into a model that you can use for 3D visualization, or BIM systems, right? So this is another a really useful angle to data science for real estate. And we can also think about computer vision or augmented and virtual reality. On the left, we have Real AR, which is a mobile app, which can be really useful, especially if you think about people not being able to move around so much, but potentially wanting to buy properties off plan. So help you to go from a floor plan to visualize, what that property would look like in 3 dimensions. So a user can walk around with a phone and get an augmented reality sort of visualization of the property. Now, another application that's kind of interesting on the right-hand side, looking at a company called H3Zoom.ai. Now, in this example, what they actually do is to send drones to fly up and examine a building to see if there are any defects, right? And so this, in terms of cost savings, definitely that delivers that, but also delivers safety improvements, right? People don't have to climb up the building and so on, right? And that also brings us to, talking about construction technology in general. That's another space, and in another couple of slides, we'll show a map for that. Smart buildings is a whole other area of sort of data science applications. So there are many different aspects to this, and if you'd like to learn a little bit more, you can look online. One of the ventures that we wanted to highlight is a pretty recent activity in Singapore. CapitaLand was launching a smart urban co-innovation lab. Partnering with Targa Ventures for that, and launch a couple of different projects that use these data science methods in different ways. And as mentioned, construction technology is a whole space, right? Some of these definitely apply data science methods to improve sort of construction activities as well. So that's a whole other area. So to sum up for property developers, sort of specific applications, a couple of things that you could potentially get from this. You could use geographic information systems to study locations and figure out the best development sites. You could scan huge data sets to find the best redevelopment opportunities. You could use automated valuation together with time series forecasting to determine future pricing and the best timing to launch particular projects for sale. And maybe you could use this to communicate the development potential of a particular site to your investors, to your investment committee, and to out-of-town buyers who might not be as familiar with a particular location. Now, let's change gears for a little bit and think about applications of real estate data science for appraisers or valuators, right? We can think about some of these various data science methods and how they can help. We can think about sort of just broadly machine learning. We can think about, getting data in, sort of web harvesting methods. We can think about building property price indexes, automated valuation, geographic information systems, time series forecasting, and cluster analysis. So first and foremost, right, using these programming methods together with all of these, we can collect and use data sets that exceed human limits. As we mentioned, a machine could use 100,000 properties to build a valuation, right? Now, this overall can help an appraiser increase their business scale, improve the accuracy of their forecast, and differentiate their offering by offering these sort of AI-powered valuations. They can also forecast time series, right? So if you're doing a discounted cash flow type model, use some of these time series forecasting methods to produce more accurate valuations. And you can use geographic information systems to use spatial or location data at scale to improve your valuations as well. Now, a couple of technologies that are kind of interesting in this space to highlight, right? We talked about, doing some of these valuations, but how could we potentially account for, say, the floor plan or layout of a particular property? There are some companies coming up in this space to help answer that question. So Attribute, based out of Singapore, actually assigns a score to every floor plan in a given residential development, and you could use those scores or maybe some of the sub-scores such as percentage livable area and things like that to help improve your valuations of real estate. Looking at the example on the right, one of the things that has traditionally not been included so much in automated valuation approaches is an assessment of the condition of the property. So a company like Foxy.ai will help, given a series of pictures, and if we think about listings have tons of pictures, but what do you do with them, right? How do you use them at scale in an automated model? Well, Foxy.ai could potentially help answer that question. You can upload all of these pictures and get an immediate score about the estimated condition of a property. If you're interested, do go to their website. There is a demo that you can play with and put some property photos online and see what kind of score they give you in terms of the condition for the photos that you uploaded. Now, let's think about if you're a realtor, how can data science and machine learning benefit you? Now, you could track, obviously, huge numbers of listings, maybe auctions, transaction data, and you can recommend to your clients the most relevant opportunities, right? You can potentially identify off-market inventory, right? As we mentioned, you can estimate, given a particular property and the original transaction price, or most recent one. You find owners with the highest equity, and maybe even if the property is not currently listed, you can knock on the door and see if they're willing to sell. You could make data-driven decisions about buying, selling, and leasing prices, and get those, accepted by your clients, who are beginning to expect such approaches. You could help to assess the property market cycle, right? From doing cluster analysis on macroeconomic data or time series forecasting. You could group the city into various sub-markets that could help you understand, which areas to specialize in, or help a client to understand whether they have a diversified portfolio or where to look at next, or maybe somebody missed a particular purchase of a property. Well, if we understand the sub-markets, we can recommend similar properties. And it can help you to visualize and communicate locality information. If you're trying to talk to, say, an out-of-town buyer, you could show them why a particular location is really good, say, in terms of school quality, commute times, or things like that. And you can forecast sub-market performance. But most of all, this could help you operate at scale and differentiate your service and give somebody a reason to choose, to work with you rather than somebody else. Some interesting technologies in this space. First, computer vision, right? So a company called Photo I Like has a really interesting tool set. You can go to their website, and again, there is a demonstration that you could play with. You can upload a couple of real estate listing photos, and it's going to score them and tell you, how attractive these photos are to a potential viewer of the real estate listing. So, it will help you to put the property that you're marketing in the best light, and potentially that might increase the probability of getting a deal closed. And then obviously also 3D viewings of properties. This has really picked up popularity recently, with recent restrictions on people moving around. Companies like Matterport helping you to do a 3D visualization so that people anywhere in the world could view a potential property with the interest of potentially buying or leasing it without having to actually visit it in person. Now, some other technologies, there's also deal technology. So if we look at on the left, simple deals, creates essentially, a deal room that has all the information needed, for both parties to close a deal. And that can be really helpful in, saving time and making things move along a lot quicker. And then interesting a company, Override.ai, which helps to produce descriptions of properties in an automated way. So if that's something that interests you and you'd like to operate at scale, you can check out Override.ai, and they will be able to write out the descriptions of property listings for you. So many different technologies that could definitely be helpful for people in real estate agency or brokerage. Now, if you're a real estate investor, right? So we've talked about a number of these applications, finding the best markets to invest in. We can use some of these machine learning methods and time series forecasting, and we can constantly scan and look at, maybe thousands of different sub-markets and operate at scale in that way and automatically keep track and say, hey, these are the top markets right now. And that can help you to prioritize your deal sourcing efforts as well. With automated valuations, we can determine fair prices to buy, sell, and lease assets. We can identify the drivers of real estate returns as well. We're able to use some techniques, together with time series forecasting as well as cluster analysis to assess portfolio diversification. We can also time sort of entries and exits into the market. And we can use geographic information systems to study location factors as well as communicate and score these. Now, looking at Proptechs, right? What are some potentials for real estate data science in the Proptech space? As mentioned, data providers can move up the value chain. Instead of selling just data, you can also sell analytics. If you're a listing website or a listing app, you could add features that could then drive traffic to your website, right? People may want to know how much their home is worth, and from there, you could get them to look at particular listings, right? Tech-enabled brokerage, use machine learning approaches to drive recommendations of properties that may suit a particular client, and also figure out buying, selling, or leasing prices. And so that can be, a good way to get people to use your brokerage service, right? And then accurate valuations and forecasts are definitely helpful if you want to operate like an instant buyer, like Opendoor, provide instant mortgages or tokenized investments. So there are many opportunities for Proptechs to take advantage of these disruptive new business models for data science and real estate. Another one to highlight is quantitatively driven investment funds, as we talked about right at the beginning. There is some movement in the space to apply all of these techniques together to figure out and actually capitalize on the best investments. Some other interesting examples of Proptech opportunities based on data science. You could build chatbots. So there's a company called FacilityBot that helps to do property management. And they use some chatbot techniques, including natural language processing and more, so that people can just type into WhatsApp or WeChat or other chat apps and get a response that helps with facility management issues. Mogul.sg is an example of a property listing portal that uses some of these natural language processing techniques. So what you're able to do is just key in the desired features such as high floor, near school, and things like that, right? With balcony. And the website is then able to pick up the most relevant listings for you, right? And then lease abstraction. A lot of records are sort of stored in PDFs and they're really wordy, long legal documents. Now, the application of some of these natural language processing techniques is to figure out how to convert that into data so that, these can become comparables that we can then use to understand potentially, where to lease the next property at, whether a particular building has, leases that are struck at or below the market, and so on. So converting that kind of raw data into usable information to build, data science approaches. So these are all opportunities in the PropTech space. Now, with that, I wanted to also highlight that if you wanted to learn more, PropertyQuants does conduct an 11 weeks applying data science and machine learning to real estate course. We've run this quite a number of times, and we have participants from institutional real estate. We've had appraisers and valuators, and we've had a lot of people from PropTech, as well as individual investors and data scientists all join the course. And it all culminates in a capstone project presentation where participants will get to pick a real-world real estate data set, use the techniques from the course, and actually build out, a functioning analysis that could become the basis, for revolutionizing the way their company works, a basis for making better investments, a basis for building up a PropTech company even. So if you'd like to find out more about the course that we run, go to propertyquants.com/training. So again, propertyquants.com/training. And fill in the form there to sign up and find out more, and you could really benefit. And as mentioned, there is a skills gap in industry. If you go through this course, you could be one of those people that can help to fill that skills gap as well. And if you have any further questions or would like to connect, please do email me. You can reach me at nelson@propertyquants.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I look forward to speaking with some of you in the future, so please do get in touch, nelson@propertyquants.com. With that, thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.